Welcome, traveler. It's time now to let go. The world of the waking is dimming. The day's weight has softened into dusk, and all the sharp edges of your thoughts are beginning to dissolve. You are safe now, here in this quiet space where nothing must be done, and nowhere calls your name. Let your body become still. Feel the hush wrap around you like ancient velvet, like moss on stone. There is no rush here, no burden of time, just the long breath of a story, drifting like fog over forgotten hills. In a place far from ours, and yet strangely close, like a half-remembered dream, there lies the land of Aeloria. Its skies are the color of memory, its forests stitched from shadow and silver light. This is a place outside of endings, where time moves not in hours, but in seasons of stillness and slow wonder. And within Aeloria's hidden vale, high upon the dreaming cliffs, the last watcher waits. This is their story, or perhaps it is your story too. Let us begin. Chapter 1. The Tower Above the Fog. There are lands not marked on any map, where memory outlives time and silence has weight. Aeloria is such a place. It lies between the folds of dusk and dream, where no sun rises and no night truly falls. A half-lit world adrift in endless twilight, where colors seem remembered rather than seen, and air moves like breath across glass. On the crest of Sky Hollow Ridge, where mist clings like moss to ancient stone, there stands a tower older than most gods. It rises from the bones of the earth as though the mountain grew it in sleep. Its shape is not proud nor imposing. It leans gently like something listening or remembering. No name is carved into its foundation. No banner flutters from its crown. Only ivy, heavy with dew, coils across its surface like silver veins. Within that tower lives the last watcher, and tonight, like every night that came before, they are awake. The watcher's movements are slow, deliberate, and unburdened by urgency. Each step echoes lightly down the spiral stairwell, muffled by age and moss-draped stone. There is no lantern in their hand. The tower does not need light. Faint glows emerge where needed, soft and organic, like a sigh remembered. Their robe trails behind them, thick and soft and gray as moon clouds. On its hem are stitched patterns of curling branches, sleeping beasts, and stars that no longer hang in any sky. They wear it not for warmth, but for remembrance. They pass a window shaped like a crescent. Beyond it, the valley. Endless trees, blue, black, and whispering, stretch like waves beneath a drifting fog. The trees here do not grow wild. They dream. Rooted in memory and time, they move only slightly, as if turning over in sleep. Far in the distance, a cluster of floating lights drifts lazily through the trees, not fireflies, not torches, something older, perhaps the souls of stories never told. The watcher does not name them. Naming breaks stillness, and Aeloria is a place of hush. They pause at the base of the stair and run their hand across a wall of stone. There, a relief carved so lightly it almost disappears, the image of a tree with no leaves its branches forming a circle around an open eye. The watcher touches it with reverence, though they cannot recall carving it. Did it grow there too, as everything in Aeloria seems to grow? The hall of windows greets them next. It is vast and curved and quiet. Dozens of arches line its outer wall, framing the sky in long slices, each window showing a different stillness. Some reveal stars spiraling slowly in unfamiliar constellations. Others show only mist. One shows a forest frozen in a single season of falling leaves, the golden rain forever suspended. The watcher walks its length with bare feet. The floor is smooth and warm. No sound follows. Time in this tower is not measured in ticking things. It pools and laps and settles like dust. There are chairs, tall-backed and empty, facing each window, each one worn smooth by decades, perhaps centuries, of quiet sitting. The watcher has occupied everyone at least once, and tonight they choose a chair carved from pale driftwood. It creaks slightly as they lower themselves, though the sound is more of welcome than protest. They rest. Not because they are tired. Tiredness is a foreign language now. But because stillness must be shared, not merely observed. From this window, the sky seems impossibly close. Clouds drift like silk scarves. Between them, the stars blink, slow and solemn. It is said, though none are left to say it now, that each star over Aeloria is a story forgotten by its teller. Some flicker, some burn, some fade gently until they are absorbed back into the dark. The watcher has long since stopped mourning those stars. They watch, as is their place, and they remember, not facts, but feeling. Tonight, a new star appears, dim, uncertain, not born of fire, born of longing. The watcher tilts their head, observing. They whisper no words. Words break things, but something like breath stirs through the chamber, a soft flutter, like pages turning in a closed book. Later, they descend further to the garden court. There is no roof above this place, only the open sky, rimmed by crumbling archways where vines sleep and orchids bloom under starlight. The air smells of stone and sweetness, and time folds in on itself here. The sleep blooms have opened. Translucent petals shiver gently in the air, catching starlight like dew. These flowers open only at night and close at the moment of waking, though waking rarely comes to Aeloria. The watcher kneels among them. They do not pluck, do not press, do not prune. Their presence is enough. The flowers lean toward them slightly, a gesture of recognition. To the west, the mirror lake reflects the sky without interruption. Its surface is undisturbed as always. Even wind dares not touch it. Only once long ago did the watcher place a fingertip upon its skin. They saw not their reflection, but a corridor of doors, some open, some shut, none labeled. They never tried again. Now they merely watch and wait. The night deepens, though no darker than before. The tower becomes a vessel for thoughtless being. The watcher returns to their upper chamber, simple, circular, and hollow of excess. Here is the only bed, though it is seldom used. A window opens directly above the pillow. Through it, the stars tell stories only silence understands. They do not lie down. They sit upon the edge and let their hands rest in their lap. Their thoughts are not thoughts anymore, more like shadows of them, echoes of what echoes used to be. They listen, and there is no sound. They breathe, and even that is quiet. Beyond the world of walls and stones, something vast stirs, not with noise, not with motion, but with presence, as if the veil between dream and memory has thinned by a breath. The watcher lifts their eyes to the sky. The stars shimmer. The valley holds its breath. They feel something reaching, not towards them, but through them. A soul beginning to remember, a dream beginning to form. A traveler, perhaps, one who is just now beginning to drift. The watcher closes their eyes. A moment of reverence, a welcome without words, and somewhere far, far away, in another world entirely, someone lies down to sleep. The tower watches, the valley waits, and the last watcher of Aeloria remains. Always the watching, remembering, becoming. Chapter 2. The Library Without End. There are places that do not end, because they were never truly built. They were dreamed layer by layer, thought by thought, by those who needed them most. The library without end was not crafted by tools or hands. It began as a whisper beneath the tower, then a hallway, then a staircase, then more. No matter how long the watcher has wandered within it, they have never touched its edge, and they have never wanted to. The entrance lies behind a narrow door, tucked beneath the root-like stair of the watcher's tower. The door is plain, but the key is not. The watcher carries it always, a shard of pale crystal tied with thin gray ribbon. It opens the door not with a sound, but with a breathless release, like fog being exhaled from an ancient lung. They descend. The stair curves downward, but not in a spiral. It bends like thought. It shifts with memory. The walls are not stone here. They are shelves. Books press close, spines silent, pages unread. They give off a faint warmth, like moss kissed by sunlight that no longer exists. Most bear no titles. Some glow. Some hum faintly when passed, others dream in silence. The watcher's hand drifts across the bindings as they walk. They do not read, they feel. Each volume is a feeling forgotten by its owner, a love never spoken, a sorrow buried too deep to name, a hope that flickered once, then vanished. They are not stories. They are echoes. The hallway opens suddenly, though it has no true door. The library breathes wider here. Chambers unfold like petals, soft-walled, domed, carpeted in velvety dust. The ceilings are impossibly high, and yet the watcher feels no weight from above. There are windows with no view, just slow golden light that trickles in from a source not of this world. The watcher steps softly across the chamber. They do not need to choose where to go. The library listens, and it leads. A shelf bends forward. A book slips free, not falling, but floating gently into the air. It finds the watcher's hands. The cover is smooth, black, and breathing. When opened, it shows no words, just a scent. The scent of the sea, not crashing waves, not salt on wind, no. The scent of waiting at the edge of something vast, of standing where the shore forgets its name. The watcher closes the book. It hums once in gratitude and returns to its place. Time does not move in the library, only presence. The watcher drifts through it like smoke, like thought, like the shadow of a long-forgotten song. And the library shifts with them. A corridor opens, long, narrow, with low shelves covered in candles that never burn down. Here the books are smaller, fragile, each one the size of a breath or a secret. They must not be touched, only remembered. The watcher bows slightly, walking slowly. The air here is thick with memory, like walking through the scent of an old scarf, or standing in the space where someone you loved once slept. And then they pause before a book shaped like a stone, heavy, warm, silent. They kneel, not out of reverence, but recognition. This book remembers them, though they cannot recall its pages. Their fingers press gently to its cover, and the silence deepens. They see not words, but shapes. An orchard at dusk, a hand in theirs, laughter beneath rain, a home once. Then it fades. The book sighs shut, and the watcher breathes again. There are rooms in the library the watcher visits only rarely. One holds nothing but mirrors, but none reflect the present, only maybes, could have beens, what almost was. Another is filled with wind, wind that does not move air, only feeling. It brushes past skin like memory touches bone. There is also a room of lanterns, each one lit, each one floating slightly above the floor, each one pulsing gently with someone's name, not spoken, felt. The watcher stands among them. They do not search. They are not looking. But one lantern drifts closer. Its light is the color of candle wax and dreams. The watcher closes their eyes. They feel the lantern's light enter them, not to warm, not to guide, just to stay. And it stays. Then it floats away. At the heart of the library is a lake, small, still, lit from below by pages instead of stars. Books lie beneath the water, open, glowing. Their words rise in bubbles. The bubbles do not pop. They rise, then vanish. Vanishing is sacred here. The watcher kneels at the lake's edge. They do not drink. They do not wade. They simply watch. And the lake remembers them. Above, the ceiling disappears. The sky of Aeloria watches in turn. A single star falls. It does not land. It becomes a book slipping into the water without a sound. The library accepts it, as it always does. The watcher stands, their robe brushing the quiet floor. They turn back. The library will close itself behind them, though no door will ever shut. It does not lock. It does not need to. It lives. And it waits. As they return to the stair, the hallway lengthens again, softly, without threat. The watcher ascends slowly, never looking back. They do not need to. The library is always with them, in thought, in silence, in breath. And tonight, a new dreamer has entered sleep. Somewhere far from Aeloria, a mind begins to drift. The library stirs. Shelves adjust. A place makes room. And the watcher watches. Chapter 3. The Clock That Never Chimes. There are places where time forgets itself, not because it has ended, but because it has ceased to matter. In the deepest part of the Watcher's Tower, past the stone gardens, beneath the roots of the dreaming stairs, there lies a chamber where no clocks move, but time still lingers. It gathers there, soft and unmoving, like dust in the corner of a room that was once loved. The watcher calls it the still heart. Not aloud, of course. Names are not spoken in Aeloria. But the thought of it hums softly in their mind each time they descend. Tonight, the way is longer than before. The stairs seem to breathe. The air is cooler, not cold, just touched by memory. With each step, the watcher feels the past curl gently around them like a shawl worn only in dreams. Moments gather at their feet. Longing curls at the base of their spine. But nothing presses, nothing pulls. This is not the past's hunger, only its presence. At the bottom, there is no door, only a stone archway, carved into the wall as if time itself opened it. The room beyond is perfectly round. Its floor is smooth and gray, with soft flecks of silver that shimmer like breath. A single clock stands in the center, tall, ancient, and unmoving. Its face is a deep bronze, tarnished with silence, its hands still, neither pointing nor resting, simply existing. Around the chamber's curve, other clocks rest. Dozens of them, no two the same. Hourglasses without sand, sundials with no shadow, watches without hands. Delicate spirals made of glimmering stone that hum faintly when approached. None make a sound, none measure anything. They are time not as motion, but as memory. The watcher crosses the floor in silence. Their bare feet touch the stone with reverence, as though it might bruise. They pause before the central clock. Its pendulum hangs motionless, yet heavy with meaning. It does not swing, but it listens. The watcher places a hand upon its side, and the chamber breathes. A hum rises not in the air, but in the soul, soft as warmth, old as breath. The watcher closes their eyes. They do not move. They do not speak. They remember there was a boy once long ago who waited for someone who never came. Each day he counted time by the pattern of leaves against the window. Each hour he listened for footsteps that never arrived. He grew, and the waiting became a part of him. The boy's name is not remembered, but his waiting is here in this room, tucked gently inside the curved glass of a pocket watch that no longer ticks. The watcher kneels beside it. The case is open. Inside, instead of numbers, there is only a sketch, drawn with the softness of memory. Two hands held, a window open, leaves drifting. They close the watch, and time folds back into stillness. Far across the chamber, an hourglass shimmers. The watcher walks toward it. The glass is curved like a shell. Inside, there is no sand, only light. A dim, silver light that moves not in grains, but in sighs. Each sigh is a moment someone wished had lasted longer. The watcher watches. The light does not descend. It does not ascend. It rests, held eternally between no longer and not yet. The hourglass is cradled in a frame of pearl and driftwood. It once belonged to a lighthouse keeper who watched a sea that never rose. Each night she waited for a storm that would never come, and when at last she slept, her patience folded into this glass. Every object in the still heart is such a story, a moment unmeasured, a beat between two thoughts, a sigh that lingered. The watcher moves between them without map or need. They do not catalog. They do not study. They simply share the room's breath. They allow it to be. Tonight, the central clock pulses faintly beneath their hand, not with movement, but with memory. A presence enters the watcher's mind, not foreign, not named, just felt somewhere far from the tower. Someone hesitates on the edge of sleep. Their thoughts spiral, their breath catches, time for them slows. And in that pause, a piece of their stillness finds its way here. The central clock absorbs it, not as weight, as whisper. The watcher opens their eyes. They say nothing, only press a palm against the bronze. A quiet acknowledgement. The chamber is darker now, though no light has dimmed. Shadows stretch not from shape, but from silence. The watcher stands once more in the middle of the room. They do not feel the need to stay, nor the need to leave, but the time, such as it is, has settled. And so they rise. Their robe brushes the floor. Their breath is long and slow. As they walk toward the archway, the clocks do not follow, but they notice. They remember. As the watcher climbs the staircase once more, the steps hum softly beneath their feet. The tower accepts their return, and far above, beyond the layers of stone and stillness, the stars shimmer. One of them flickers slightly. A hesitation, a question. The watcher does not answer. They never do. But the star remains. Aeloria does not mark the passage of time. It receives it, folds it, stores it gently in chambers like this. The watcher knows this. They have always known. And tonight, another traveler lies awake, drifting slowly. Another moment of almost rest becomes part of this place. The watcher climbs in silence. No chime sounds, none ever will. But time is listening, and it is enough. Chapter 4. The Garden of Sleepless Trees. Beyond the base of the tower, past the moss-draped stones and the faint glimmer of half-remembered doorways, lies a gate made not of iron or wood, but of woven branches and soft silver thread. The watcher opens it with no key, only presence and the moment they step through, the air changes. Here the world is softer. The garden of sleepless trees does not sleep, but it dreams. The path is narrow, paved with flattened roots and fallen leaves that have not browned or broken. They rest as if freshly laid, yet some have been there for centuries. The trees surrounding the path are tall and pale, their trunks smooth as river stone, their bark bearing no marks of age or weather. They sway not with the wind, but with thought, gentle and slow, as if their own dreams tug softly at their limbs. Each tree has grown in its own quiet spiral, some bending inward toward themselves, others leaning toward unseen points in the distance, as though listening to something too far away to hear. No two are the same, but they are all part of a single rhythm, a single stillness. This is a forest without time, where growth is not measured in rings, but in memory. The watcher walks slowly. Their feet leave no mark, but the trees know they have come. Some part slightly to widen the path. Others hum faintly, not with sound, but with a vibration in the chest, like the feeling before a thought takes form. Here, every tree holds a dream that was never spoken aloud. Not nightmares, not visions, just quiet thoughts, those that passed through a mind in the night and drifted away before morning, the kind that feel too light to matter, but linger. The watcher stops beside a tree that leans so far inward it has almost curled into itself. Beneath it, the earth has given way to a shallow hollow, filled with fine strands of moss and what appears to be rainwater, though no rain falls in this garden. They kneel and touch the surface gently with their fingers. A ripple forms, not in the water, but in the air above it. For a moment, the scent of a distant place reaches them, ink and lavender, a curtain billowing on a summer evening. A name is almost spoken, but it dissolves before it can take shape. They sit beneath the tree, letting its shadow settle over them like a memory. From somewhere nearby, a low sound begins to rise, not music, not wind. It is the hush of all things that might have been said, but were not. The sound drifts lazily between the branches, rustling leaves that shimmer faintly in a color that cannot be named. The watcher breathes it in. 'Tis not meant to be understood, only felt. After a while they rise again. There is no need to mark the time. It has folded itself back into the bark. The path continues, winding gently past trees that carry stories in their sapwood. Unlived moments, alternate turns, a kindness withheld, a door not opened. Further in, the trees grow closer, their roots interwoven like the lines of a forgotten poem. The canopy above thickens, but does not darken. Instead, the light softens, filtered through translucent leaves that glow with an inner luminescence. The watcher pauses again, this time before a tree that has no trunk at all, only a ring of branches growing upward in a spiral, leaving the center empty, like a memory that was once there and has since been lifted. They step into the circle. Instantly, the world quiets, not in silence, but in something more complete. Here, even thought feels like an echo. In the center of the spiral stands a small pool, no larger than a bowl, filled with still water that reflects not the sky, but the watcher's own face, though not as it is now, as it once was, or might have been. They do not react. There is no surprise and recognition here, only acceptance, The reflection shifts. The face becomes unfamiliar, and then familiar again. Another life glimpsed, another self who stood in this same place under a different moon. Perhaps all watchers have stood here, or perhaps there has only ever been one. Stepping back from the spiral, the watcher resumes their slow walk. The path bends gently again and opens into a glade. At its center, a single tree stands alone. It is the tallest in the garden, though its roots are shallow, barely disturbing the earth. Its leaves shimmer between silver and deep green, and its bark is inscribed with delicate markings that shift as the eye tries to follow them. This is the first tree, or so the watcher has always believed. Not because anyone told them so, but because the air around it insists upon reverence. They approach and sit cross-legged beneath its wide boughs. Here the dreams are strongest. They come not as images, but as sensations. Cool stone, quiet rain, a bed warmed only by memory. No story forms, but something within the watcher feels restored, like a page returning to its book. They rest there for a long time, or perhaps no time at all. Eventually, the glade begins to dim, not into darkness, but into quiet. The trees lean back, the whispers soften. Somewhere beyond the garden, the tower calls, not with sound, with stillness, with return. The watcher rises slowly and follows the path again, the gate drawing closer with each step. As they pass once more beneath the woven arch, the trees do not say farewell. They do not need to. Their dreams have been shared, and in sharing, remembered. Chapter 5. The Room Where the Stars Fall Inward. The tower stretches high, but the staircase winds higher still. Past the archways carved from breath, beyond the quiet rooms where time gathers like dew, the watcher ascends. The steps grow thinner, the air lighter. The world below fades, not in distance, but in weight. They carry nothing, not even memory, for up here, memory dissolves into presence, and presence dissolves into stillness. There is no door to the final chamber, just a veil of light, soft as dust, parting like mist as the watcher steps through. The room they enter does not obey form. Its walls, if they are walls, move gently like the surface of a deep lake, mirroring not what is seen, but what is felt. The ceiling curves away into forever, speckled with stars, not above, but all around. Some drift gently upward, others hover in stillness. A few pulse slowly, like the rhythm of breath just before sleep. In the center of the room stands a basin, carved not from stone or metal, but from something older, perhaps silence itself. It holds no water, no light, only a soft pull, like the tide inside a shell. It draws nothing in, but everything toward. The watcher stands before it for a long while, not waiting, just being. Then slowly they sit. The stars begin to turn, not across the sky, but within the room, as if gravity has reversed its meaning. They fall, not down, but inward, into the basin, into the watcher, into memory, and past it. Each star carries a moment, a thought once nearly forgotten, a kindness given without witness, the hush of snowfall, a hand reaching in the dark, the final note of a lullaby, the silence between two people who understand each other. The stars fall gently, They do not rush. Nothing in this place ever does. The watcher closes their eyes. They are not tired, but full. The kind of fullness that comes at the end of a long, silent night, when the sky has begun to pale and the world has not yet remembered its name. Around them, the stars continue to fall, not endlessly, but slowly enough that no moment is ever missed. This is the heart of the tower, the purpose behind the watching, not to guard, not to judge, not even to keep time, but to witness it, to hold it, to let it fall inward, where nothing is ever lost. The watcher's breath slows, their presence softens. They are not vanishing, only fading into what was always there, and in that silence, not sleep, not waking, something settles, a quiet, a completion, a light that does not shine, but remains. The stars, now fewer, drift more slowly. Some return upward, others nestle into the basin like petals on still water. The room grows quieter. The veil of light at the entrance closes not with finality, but with peace. Outside, Aeloria holds its breath, and somewhere in the garden below, a tree shivers softly, its leaves catching the memory of a voice never spoken aloud. The watcher does not return, but their stillness remains. For in Aeloria nothing is ever gone, only remembered differently. And so the tower watches on, without time, without end, bathed in the soft falling of stars, that fall not from above, but rise forever inward. Welcome, traveler. It's time now to let go. The world of the waking is dimming. The day's weight has softened it to dusk, and all the sharp edges of your thoughts are beginning to dissolve. You are safe now, here in this quiet space where nothing must be done, and nowhere calls your name. Let your body become still. Feel the hush wrap around you like ancient velvet, like moss on stone. There is no rush here, no burden of time, just the long breath of a story, drifting like fog over forgotten hills. Chapter 1. Beneath the whispering canopy. The forest was already half asleep when the traveler arrived, its canopy dimmed in shades of pewter and ink, each leaf a fading sigh of light. The path behind them had vanished. Perhaps it had never truly existed. But ahead, the trees opened in a hush of breathless invitation. There was no map, only the faint shimmer of embers beneath the underbrush, a flickering line of soft gold that curled like a cat through the woods. The traveler did not speak. They rarely did. Words felt too heavy for this place, too sharp. Instead, they moved slowly, as one might through a dream they are not sure they wish to wake from. Each step sank gently into moss and loam, the earth cool and forgiving. The air was rich with the scent of cedar, leaf mold, and something older, something like memory or forgotten song. Here, light did not shine so much as float. Fireflies drifted like sleepy stars caught in slow tides, and high above, thin strands of mist curled through the boughs like the remnants of old stories not yet spoken aloud. The ember path glowed faintly at their feet. Not fire exactly, there was no heat, no flame, but a kind of warmth nonetheless, as though the forest itself remembered long-lost hearths and traced their echoes into the soil. The light pulsed slowly, in rhythm with the traveler's steps, guiding but never rushing. It seemed to hum in a language too gentle to hear, but not too quiet to feel. They paused near an ancient tree, gnarled and hollowed at the heart, its bark creased like the skin of a sleeping giant. Something lived inside, a slow, curling presence, like a breath held too long, but it did not stir. The traveler placed a hand on the trunk, and the wood felt cool, but awake, as if the tree had been waiting patiently for someone who would not ask questions. Above them, the sky deepened into velvet hues, indigo, silver, and the faintest trace of violet. The last bird call had faded, and in its place, the forest sang a softer lullaby. The creak of limbs swaying, the hush of leaves turning over in their sleep, the quiet exhale of wind through nettled undergrowth. A small stream wound through the roots like a silken ribbon, its surface glassy with reflected starlight. The traveler knelt to sip from it, and the water tasted of stone and memory, of snowmelt and lullabies once whispered by unseen mouths. It left a cool trail down their throat, and in its wake a strange comfort bloomed, as though something within them was being gently unfolded. Farther along the path, shapes began to emerge in the haze. Not creatures exactly, though some had the suggestion of limbs or wings, but more like reminders, shadows cast by emotions not yet named. One drifted past, a thin silver filament like the wisp of a dream forgotten upon waking. Another lingered just beyond sight, tall and thin and pulsing softly, like a heartbeat made visible. None of them made sound. None of them watched. They simply were. The traveler felt no fear, only the kind of awe that wraps itself around silence, as if every step forward unspooled a thread of something sacred, something beneath thought, beneath language. They reached a low clearing where the embers gathered in a spiral, curling inward like a sleeping nautilus. The traveler stood at its edge, listening. A breeze passed through, cool and careful, and with it came the scent of smoke, though no fire burned. It smelled of candle wax and hearthstone, of pages turned slowly and libraries no longer marked on any map. And in that spiral of emberlight, something stirred, not a creature, but a feeling, a memory not their own, a glimpse of marble towers wrapped in ivy, of bridges spun from silver thread, of bells that rang once and have not rung since. The traveler closed their eyes, felt the echo, let it pass through them like dusk passes through the trees. When they opened their eyes again, the spiral had straightened into a path once more, leading deeper, always deeper. The forest was darker now, but the embers shone brighter, cradling their steps in gentle light. And above all, the hush remained like a promise kept. The traveler moved on, slowly, softly, dreaming with their eyes open, and somewhere far ahead, the first glimmer of Hollowvale, lost city of twilight and ruin, began to stir from its slumber. Chapter 2. The Grove of Listening Stones. There was no telling how long the traveler had walked. time had softened here, blurred at the edges like ink soaked into velvet parchment. The ember-lit path unfurled beneath their feet in its quiet golden hush, as steady and patient as breath. The deeper they went, the more the forest changed, not with suddenness, but with the slow grace of evening becoming night. The trees grew taller here, but thinner, like pillars holding up a cathedral of stars. Their bark had turned pale, nearly white, etched with fine silver threads that glimmered when the wind stirred the leaves. The foliage no longer rustled in green murmurs, but in soft whispers, barely heard, yet deeply felt, like voices speaking behind a dream. The traveler paused, and the hush welcomed them like an old friend. Each breath they took seemed to draw the forest closer, as though the trees leaned in to listen. And then the grove revealed itself. It was a wide clearing, perfectly round, cupped gently in the arms of the woods. At its center, a ring of tall stones stood upright in the moss, each one worn smooth by ages untold. They rose at uneven heights, yet their presence was steady, almost regal, guardians of stillness, sentinels of silence. The stones glowed faintly in the emberlight, not reflecting it, but seeming to recall their own memory of flame. The traveler stepped between them, and the air changed, becoming denser, yet softer, like the hush of snowfall. There was no sound from the forest now, only the breath of stillness, the kind of stillness that carried meaning, though no words were spoken. They sat upon the moss, cross-legged and unhurried, in the center of the circle. The ground was cool, but not cold, the kind of coolness that soothed rather than chilled. Around them, the stones hummed, not with music, but with memory. Old, old memory, layers of it, curling like fog. Then came the voices. They did not speak aloud, nor rise like sound. Rather, they emerged in the mind, gentle as a drifting thought, clear as a bell in water. The traveler did not flinch. They had heard such voices before, though never quite like this. Each stone spoke in turn, not in language, but in impression, in feeling. The first shared the taste of rain on ancient marble and the echo of footsteps in a hall whose roof had long since fallen. The second gave the scent of lavender grown wild through broken streets, and the warmth of a hand once held, now gone. The third offered the vision of children chasing fireflies through empty archways, laughter like wind chimes, long vanished. Each stone told its own quiet truth, fragments of a world that had drifted into sleep. Hollowvale. The name curled through the traveler's mind like a thread of smoke. A city that had once stood tall with grace and beauty, now folded into twilight. Not destroyed, not forgotten, but remembered differently by the trees, by the wind, by the stones, by the hush. The traveler closed their eyes and let the memories pass through them. There was no sorrow here, only stillness, no mourning, only reverence. These were not ruins, they were remnants, not broken, but waiting. As the traveler breathed, a soft wind passed through the grove. The moss rippled. The embers flared brighter for a moment, then softened again, as if sighing. One by one, the stones faded back into stillness, their stories shared for now. The traveler rose slowly, respectfully, bowed their head, and stepped out of the circle. The path was still there, waiting, curling onward like the tail of a gentle flame. The trees leaned close, their branches swaying just enough to guide without pushing. Ahead, the forest shifted again. The white trees grew sparser, giving way to darker, denser growth. Vines heavy with night blossoms unfurled along the ground, their petals glowing faintly with a soft, silvery blush. The scent of them, cool, sweet, and strangely familiar, wrapped around the traveler like a half-remembered lullaby. And still the embers glowed beneath their feet, faithful, unfading, leading deeper into dream. Above, the sky had turned a deep blue-gray, dusted with stars that blinked slowly as if watching with old, drowsy eyes. The traveler walked on, each step lighter than the last, as if the forest were quietly lifting the weight of the world from their shoulders. A sound, soft, rhythmic, low, began to pulse through the earth, not loud enough to disturb, only enough to guide, a heartbeat, slow and ancient, thudding deep beneath stone and root. The path curved gently toward it, and somewhere just ahead, beyond the reach of starlight and branch, something old and beautiful awaited, something not seen in waking eyes for many lifetimes. The traveler did not quicken their pace. There was no need. Nothing here would be lost to haste. Every step was part of the remembering, and the ember path led on. Chapter 3. The Lantern Pool. The air grew softer as the path turned. It was not that the forest became warmer. No, the breeze still carried the cool hush of deep-rooted places, but something in the texture of the world grew gentler, as if the leaves themselves had turned to velvet, and the sky was now woven from fine dusk. The traveler followed the ember path as it curved through a grove of hanging vines and shadowed branches. Above, the canopy had opened just enough to reveal a wide spill of stars, gleaming like softened pearls in a bowl of ink. There was no moon, only the faint silver sheen of starlight and the pulsing golden hush of the embers below. They came upon the pool without realizing they had arrived. One moment the path curled through undergrowth. The next it opened into a glade so still it felt untouched by even breath. The water stretched before them like black glass, wide and utterly smooth, as if not even time dared to disturb its surface. Trees arched over its banks, their trunks bent as though bowing in reverence. Their roots reached out, fingers threading into the moss, holding the world in place. The only light came from beneath the surface. Small lanterns, dozens, perhaps hundreds, drifted below the water, their glow soft as candlelight behind cupped hands. They floated in no particular pattern, yet together they formed a slow, swaying constellation. Some flickered gently, others held steady, and none ever rose to the surface. They simply were, suspended in the quiet deep, as though the pool itself had remembered the sky and held it close. The traveler stepped to the water's edge, their boots sinking slightly into the moss. The air smelled of lilies and old stone, with the faintest trace of wax and cedar wood. A ripple crossed the surface, so slow it seemed to take minutes to reach the far shore. And when it passed, The traveler saw their reflection, not as they were, but as they had been in forgotten moments, standing in a rain-soaked alley, face upturned, seated beneath an overhang of ivy, humming to no one, walking beside someone whose hand they could no longer quite remember. The pool reflected not just form, but feeling. They sat upon this bank, and the moss welcomed them like a shawl. No thoughts pressed in, no names rose, only the soft rhythm of the lanterns beneath the surface, drifting in unhurried procession. Somewhere far off, a sound like chimes in water rang out, faint and slow, as if time itself were singing. The traveler listened without needing to understand. There was meaning even without meaning. A figure emerged across the water, no more than a shimmer at first, like moonlight behind a veil. It stood on the far bank, unmoving, watching. Not a person, not quite, but shaped as one, draped in robes woven from mist and memory. A crown of ivy rested upon its brow, though its face was featureless, smooth as still water. The traveler did not startle. They simply watched in return. The figure raised a hand, pale, gloved in shadow, and pointed to the pool, then to the traveler's chest. The gesture was not a command, but an invitation. The traveler looked down, and in their lap, nestled in their palm without ever being placed there, was a single glowing ember, small, warm, beating like a tiny sleeping heart. They rose without hurry and stepped forward. The water welcomed their reflection again, but this time something was different. The lanterns below stirred, circling gently. The traveler knelt, cupped the ember, and let it fall into the pool. It did not sink, nor did it float. It joined. At once, the light beneath the surface brightened, not all at once, but in a soft bloom, like petals, opening at dawn. A single note rang out, not with sound, but with sensation. Peace, deep, resonant, echoing through the bones and soft parts of the mind. The pool shimmered. The reflection changed again, not into memories, but into something new. A gate, a bridge, a tower bathed in silver vines. The outline of Hollowvale, perhaps, or its dream. The figure on the far bank slowly turned and walked back into the trees, dissolving into mist as it went. No farewell, no need. The ember path reappeared at the pool's edge, glowing a little brighter now, as if pleased, as if proud. The traveler turned away from the water, carrying no lantern, yet somehow carrying light. And deeper they went. The hush followed, thick as velvet. The air hummed with a sweetness like lilac and smoke. Crickets sang a lazy lullaby rhythm in the distant brush, and the breeze carried whispers that spoke not in words, but in the memory of stories once told by someone who loved you. Each step was gentler than the last, each breath slower, and in the hush between footsteps, the name Hollowvale echoed again, not aloud, not even in the mind, but in the feeling of being called home. Chapter 4. The Sleepwalkers' Orchard. The forest began to thin, slowly, like a veil being drawn back, layer by layer. Trees softened into silhouettes, more suggestion than form. Moss gave way to soft earth, and the embers beneath the traveler's feet glowed in a wider arc now, stretching out as though easing into a sigh. The hush had deepened into something richer than silence, something complete. It surrounded the traveler like wool wrapped around an old tale. There were no insects here, no birds, no rustling branches, only the sound of breath and heartbeat, and even those seemed part of the stillness. They walked without hurry. The ground sloped gently upward, and the air held the faint perfume of ripened fruit and cold leaves. Somewhere nearby, a breeze stirred that had not stirred in centuries. And then the orchard revealed itself. It did not arrive all at once, but emerged as if the traveler's eyes simply grew capable of seeing it. Row upon row of ancient trees, gnarled and silver-limbed, heavy with strange, glowing fruit. The fruit shimmered faintly, not golden nor silver, but something between, like memory caught in crystal. Some hung low, brushing the tops of wild grasses. Others clung high, untouched, still as sleeping stars. The orchard stretched far in every direction, yet it didn't feel vast. It felt quiet, held in place, protected. As the travelers stepped between the first trees, they felt a shift in the air, as though they had entered a chapel woven not of stone, but root and bloom. Each tree seemed to hum, low and barely there in different tones, not music, not exactly, but harmony nonetheless. And then they saw them, the sleepwalkers. Figures moved gently among the trees, barefoot and slow. They wore robes spun from fog and dusk, faces hidden in the dimness, though no effort was made to conceal them. They simply were, drifting between trunks and blossoms, touching the fruit with reverent fingers. Some murmured as they walked, soft words without language. Others seemed to glide, eyes closed, arms open as if embracing something only they could see. None acknowledged the traveler, yet none ignored them. The orchard existed outside of greeting and farewell. The traveler continued on, their steps softened by the hush. They passed a sleepwalker who cradled a glowing fruit in both hands, as if offering it to the air. Another knelt beneath a branch, listening to the bark with eyes full of dreams. Their presence was neither haunting nor serene, just true, echoes of something between waking and remembering. The traveler reached a tree whose trunk was wide and cracked with silver veins. Its fruit hung low, swaying gently, though no wind stirred. A single one, shaped like a teardrop, hovered near eye level. It glowed softly, not bright, but warm. Drawn by something deep and wordless, the traveler reached out. Their fingers brushed the fruit, and in that moment the orchard fell still. The light of the fruit pulsed once. Then the traveler saw, not with eyes, not through time, but through feeling. They saw a quiet room lit by candlelight, a pair of hands holding theirs, a book open to the middle, a story never finished. They saw a window overlooking a city wrapped in ivy, its streets filled with laughter that did not echo anymore. They saw themselves, not as they were now, but as they had once been in 100 quiet moments long since let go. Not memories, reminders of the self beneath the years. The fruit dimmed, and the traveler lowered their hand. The hush returned. All around them, the sleepwalkers continued their slow wander, never pausing, never watching. But now, something had shifted. One of them, the smallest, cloaked in what looked like starlight and moss, paused as they passed. They placed something gently in the crook of a tree before moving on, a single folded note, bound by no string. When the traveler approached, the note unfolded without touch. There was no writing, just a single pressed petal, still fragrant, and a breath of thought. The way forward remembers you. The ember path glowed once more at the orchard's edge, where the trees grew thinner and the hush began to hum with something new. Not urgency, not fear, expectation. The traveler stepped away from the orchard, past the sleepwalkers, past the fruit, and back onto the soft earth laced with light. Behind them, the orchard faded, not vanishing, but settling, like a dream returning to sleep. Ahead, the trees arched again, forming a tunnel of dark branches and flowering shadow. The air smelled of rain on old stone. Somewhere far beyond, there was the echo of chimes, and something greater than memory waiting in the quiet. The path had become narrower now, lined not just with embers, but with small, delicate runes etched in moss. They glowed faintly as the traveler passed, as if recognizing them. And Hollowvale, not a destination, but a becoming. Chapter 5. The Threshold of the Forgotten Gate. The trees closed in gently now, not as a warning, but as a hush drawn deeper. The light had changed. Fewer embers lined the path, yet those that remained glowed with a richer warmth, amber and copper, soft as breath on a mirror. Their glow didn't push away the shadows, but folded them into something velvety, like dusk wrapped in candlelight. The traveler walked slowly, not from fatigue, for their body felt lighter than it had in memory, but from reverence. The silence here was full of presence. It draped the world like a velvet curtain and carried with it the feeling that each step was being watched, not with eyes, but with remembrance. Beneath their feet, the earth had changed. No longer mossy or soft with leaves, it had turned to smooth stone, veined with patterns worn down by centuries. Glyphs shaped like roots, eyes, and towers spiraled faintly beneath the dust. Some of them flickered gently, as though responding to the traveler's steps. The trees fell away one by one, until at last the forest opened into a wide hollow, sunken, cradled between ridges of ancient stone, and at its heart stood the gate. It was not tall, not grand, not gilded. It was quiet, a low arch of dark stone covered in vines that glowed with silver memory. Time had not broken it, only softened it. Moss curled over its crown like sleep around a brow. At its center, suspended where a door might once have hung, was only mist. Cool, silver, and still like breath held in a cold room. The traveler stepped closer, and the gate breathed. Just once, a slow inhale, as if recognizing the soul that now stood before it. Around the edge of the arch, the vines shimmered and shifted, as though they, too, were alive. Symbols bloomed on their leaves, dream script and forgotten tongues that sang softly to themselves, not a warning, a welcome, a remembering. Beneath the arch, the mist stirred, and the traveler glimpsed something impossible within it. A staircase spiraling downward into stars. A hallway of mirrors that reflected not faces but choices. A garden grown through the ribs of time, where bells bloomed like flowers. A room, just a room, small, familiar, with a bed, a candle, a book left open to a page half read. The traveler stepped back, not from fear, but because something in them had softened, loosened, broken in the gentlest way, the way old sorrow does when it's finally given a place to rest. They turned and sat at the edge of the hollow. The sky above was veiled in deep blue now, scattered with slow-turning stars. And though the gate pulsed softly behind them, it did not urge. It waited. The traveler rested. They closed their eyes, and the hush of the forest settled over them like a lullaby woven in moss. Within, the echoes of the journey stirred softly, the whispers of the stones, the pool of lanterns, the sleepwalkers beneath their glowing trees, and the ember path itself, winding like a quiet flame through the dark. Each memory was a light, not to guide forward, but to hold, to keep, eh? And there, beneath the stars, the traveler understood. Hollowvale was never lost. It had simply fallen into memory, into hush, into waiting. A city not of ruins, but of rest. A place not meant to be returned to, but to be felt, carried. The traveler would pass through the gate when the time was right, when they were ready not to wake, but to remember fully, to step beyond forgetting. But not just yet, not tonight. Tonight, the hush would hold them, and Hollowvale would wait, behind its breathless gate, wrapped in sleep, and lit by the gentle ember path. Chapter 6. Where the City Sleeps. The air beyond the gate was not colder, only quieter. The kind of quiet that does not merely surround you, but lives within you, filling your ribs, your throat, the soft spaces behind your eyes. As the traveler passed beneath the low arch of stone and vine, the world seemed to pause, not to end, but to turn, as if this moment had always waited, just out of reach. There was no wind, no birds, no footfall, but their own. And yet, the city was not empty. Hollowvale lay in a soft basin of stone and ivy, veiled in twilight, neither night nor day. The buildings, once grand, were now gently crumbled, arched windows open to the sky, towers leaning as if in conversation, walls traced with moss that shimmered faintly under the lightless glow above. There were no sharp edges here. Time had worn them all smooth, and the city breathed, not with air, but with presence, a slow rhythmic thrum beneath the stones, as if Hollowvale dreamed, and in its dreaming remembered itself. The traveler walked the streets where the ember path wove onward, now faded, almost gone, but still there if one followed the warmth in their chest. It passed beneath stone arches, through open doorways filled with dust and petals, across bridges laced with ivy and mist. There were signs of life, not recent, not loud, but gentle echoes left behind. A teacup, half full, on a balcony that overlooked nothing but stars. A child's scarf, caught forever in the fingers of a railing. A book, splayed open on a step, its pages fluttering though there was no breeze. A single shoe, moss-cradled and waiting. Each detail was quiet and tender and unchanged. The city was not haunted. It was held. The traveler paused before a great round plaza at the center of Hollowvale. In its heart stood a fountain, dry but not broken. Vines wreathed its bowl, and from its basin rose an arching sculpture of open hands, palms upward, catching falling leaves that had long since turned to light. Around the plaza stood hollow statues, worn and faceless, not as monuments, but as witnesses. Each one had a posture of gentleness, some kneeling, some seated, one resting against the wall, with its hand laid across its chest. They were not watching the traveler. They were being watched, through memory, by all who had walked this path before. The traveler sat at the edge of the fountain. Their breath came slower now. The hush filled their limbs. The ember in their heart, the one given freely and gently and without name, had grown still, not extinguished, but settled, like the last glow in a hearth before dream takes you. They closed their eyes, and Hollowvale spoke. Not in words, not even in sound, but in knowing. A flood of calm, not joy, not sorrow, but that deeper quiet beneath both rose gently through their bones. Not a story told, but a story recognized, one that had lived inside them all along, unnamed and long forgotten. It had no plot, no climax, no end, only a door. And now it had opened. They saw the orchard again, the lantern pool, the dream runes on the path, and they saw a city, not asleep, but sleeping, by choice. A sanctuary of forgetting, a lullaby built from stone and vine, a resting place for the parts of the self too soft to survive the waking world. And above it all, the sky, not black, not blue, but the color of silence before morning. The traveler rose, not to leave, but to join, to remain in some small way, to become one more hush within the hush, one more echo of stillness, not as a statue, not as a shadow, but as a story held quietly in the folds of Hollowvale's dream. And as they stepped once more through the city's soft, broken streets, the ember path faded behind them, but never quite vanished. Because the ember path is not a trail. It is a memory of belonging, a quiet pull toward home when the day has grown too loud, a place within you where the hush has always been waiting. You may forget its name. You may forget the gates, the orchard, the pool, but Hollowvale remembers you always. And if, by some quiet chance, your eyes are still open, if your thoughts still drift like slow mist above the embers, then let this be just a small whispered reminder. If this story brought you a moment of stillness, a sigh of peace, or a place to rest your thoughts, don't hesitate to gently like, subscribe, or follow. Whatever soft shape that takes in this world, these quiet gestures help the path stay lit so that others may find their way here too. When the night feels too heavy or the waking world too loud, each click is a tiny lantern, each share another step on the trail. No rush, no pressure, just a gentle nudge beneath the stars. Thank you for walking with me through Hollowvale. Now, let go if you haven't already. Let the hush take over, and sleep well, traveler. You are home. Welcome, traveler. It's time now to let go. The world of the waking is dimming. The day's weight has softened into dusk, and all the sharp edges of your thoughts are beginning to dissolve. You are safe now, here in this quiet space where nothing must be done, and nowhere calls your name. Let your body become still. Feel the hush wrap around you like ancient velvet, like moss on stone. There is no rush here, no burden of time, just the long breath of a story, drifting like fog over forgotten hills. Beyond the edge of map and memory lies a forest that no path claims, no compass points toward, a place that has always existed just beyond the edge of knowing. And in its heart there stands a tree, hollow and vast, old beyond reckoning. Beneath its roots things stir, not with malice, not with fear, but with memory. The tree listens, and tonight so shall we. Now close your eyes and follow. The earth is soft. The leaves whisper your name. The story is waiting. Chapter 1. The Path of Sleeping Ferns. The forest was already there when the first breath of moonlight touched it, waiting unmoved, as if time had paused just long enough to let the world forget it. The trees stood tall but did not tower, their trunks wrapped in layers of moss that shimmered faintly in the dim light like velvet soaked in dusk. No wind moved through the branches, no birds called, and yet the forest did not feel empty. It felt watched, not with menace, but with curiosity, like a dream waiting to be remembered. The path, if it could be called that, was not marked. There were no stones, no steps worn smooth by feet, only the quiet parting of fern and fog, folding back slowly as if the forest itself were letting you in. The ferns reached waist high, their fronds soft and cool against the skin, releasing a faint scent of loam and lavender as they brushed past. The traveler, cloaked in silence and the deep breath of night, moved slowly. Each footstep seemed to hush the world around it. No direction called, no destination urged. There was only movement, slow and fluid, as if each motion brought them deeper, not only into the forest, but into the softened edges of themselves. Far above, the canopy formed a living ceiling, woven boughs, thick with ancient leaves that filtered the moonlight into silver-green strands. The sky could barely be seen, yet the light that managed to fall through was gentle, like water flowing over skin. Soon, The forest began to change, not suddenly, but gradually, as if the air itself was remembering something. The ferns grew thicker, their fronds bending with a kind of quiet weight. Stones appeared beside the path, covered in lichens that glowed faintly blue, like memories etched into the skin of the earth. A stream whispered somewhere to the left, its voice threading through the trunks like silk. The sound was not constant. It faded in and out, as if the water were deciding when to be known. The traveler paused, not from tiredness, but from instinct. Ahead, where the ferns parted, stood a tree unlike the others, not because it was taller or broader, though it was, but because it listened. Its bark was a deep gray-black, streaked with veins of soft ivory. Moss grew in swirling patterns along its base, and in the hollow where its roots spread apart, the earth seemed to breathe. It was not the hollow tree. No, not yet. But this was the first sentinel, a marker, a memory. The traveler stepped closer. At its base, nestled between roots like fingers curled around a secret, lay a stone bowl filled with rainwater. The water's surface was perfectly still, reflecting not the traveler's face, but a sky that could not be seen, one filled with drifting clouds and slow stars. The traveler knelt, letting fingers trail through the surface. No ripples formed, only a sensation, light and distant, like remembering the touch of someone who once called your name in a dream. The forest seemed to lean closer, and then the whisper came. Not a voice, not words, just a pulse in the air, a sigh in the spine, the sense that something had just turned its head somewhere far beneath the roots. The traveler rose again. There was no fear, only stillness. The path continued, winding softly deeper into the forest, though it never sharpened. No direction grew clearer, only the feeling of being led, not by trail, but by trust. All around, the trees began to curve subtly inward, as if drawing toward a center not yet reached. Their branches tangled like old thoughts, and the ferns grew lower, less wild. The fog thickened slightly, curling at the ankles, like a creature that did not want to be seen but did not wish to hide. And still the traveler walked. Somewhere in the distance the sound of chimes, barely audible, drifted on the still air. Not wind chimes, something softer, like glass humming beneath water, like memory echoing through wood. As they moved further, the ground changed. Softer, spongier, the air warmer, the trees closer now, as though the world itself were preparing to whisper, preparing to open. And then, in the hush before sleep fully claims its listener, the first true glimpse appeared. Through the low-hung branches, past the curtain of fog and fern, a tree stood alone, vast, hollow, breathing, not waiting, welcoming. Its roots curled down into the earth like stairways, its trunk split wide at the base, revealing a shadowed chamber lit not by flame, but by the slow glow of dreaming things. The traveler did not speak. They stepped forward, and the roots opened. The forest did not end. It deepened, and the whisper came again, this time closer, this time knowing. Chapter 2. The Chamber of remembered echoes. The roots of the hollow tree spiraled wide like arms gently curled around the hollow of the world. As the traveler stepped across the threshold, the forest above seemed to hold its breath, not out of fear or farewell, but reverence. Inside, the light changed. It was not dim nor bright. It pulsed softly like breath, sourced from nowhere visible and casting no shadows. The chamber stretched far beneath the surface, yet it felt close, intimate, as if the tree's heart had opened to share something meant only for this moment. The air was warm, still. It carried the scent of cedar and old parchment, of dried herbs hung in forgotten rooms, and something else, something like worn fabric or skin that once pressed against your own. The traveler moved slowly, their footsteps soundless across the floor of compacted root and velvet moss. Along the inner walls of the tree, shelves had formed not by hand, but by intention. Natural folds in the wood, shaped over centuries, cradling objects left by those who had come before. A cracked teacup, a bundle of feathers tied with blue thread, a bell with no clapper. Each item rested in silence, untouched, but not forgotten. The traveler paused before a cluster of tiny scrolls, each no longer than a fingertip, sealed with glimmering wax. They did not open one. They didn't need to. The feeling was already there. Words written, but never spoken. Promises never said aloud. Forgiveness too tender to reach the tongue. They moved on, deeper into the chamber. The ceiling opened upward now, revealing an impossible space, a hollow so vast it could not fit within the tree, and yet it did. Far above, high within the curve of the trunk, soft glimmers drifted down like falling dust. Not stars, memories. They glowed faintly as they descended, catching briefly in the air before dissolving like ash into stillness. The traveler reached out a hand. One of the glimmers brushed across their palm and lingered, cool and soft as silk. A flicker passed behind their eyes. Not a scene, but a sensation. Rain on warm stone, the sound of footstep crossing a wooden bridge, the weight of someone resting beside them long ago. The memory was not theirs, and yet they remembered it. Around them the chamber pulsed again, barely perceptible, like the slow blink of a dreaming creature. Somewhere deeper within, a low hum began to build, not loud, not urgent, just present. A voice, not a voice. A whisper shaped like meaning. The traveler followed it, not with ears, but with the pull in their chest that knows where quiet wants to take you. They passed beneath a long arch of woven roots, their surfaces lined with carvings not made by tools, but by time. Symbols, flowing like a language never spoken aloud. Spirals, eyes, circles nested within circles. Each one breathed softly as the traveler moved past. Beyond the arch, the chamber narrowed. The walls curled inward, becoming smoother, as though the tree was guiding, not confining. At the end of the passage, a pool waited. Shallow, silent. Its surface shimmered with a light that didn't reflect. It glowed from below, from deep within the stillness. The traveler knelt beside it, leaning in. The water was perfectly clear, but it did not show the face of the one who peered into it. It showed a door, not a physical one, not of wood or stone, but something that had once been closed. Inside the traveler, something softened, not with understanding, but with allowing. They dipped their fingers into the pool. The ripples moved outward, then inward, then outward again. Each wave carried a sound, not heard, but felt. Footsteps in another room. A sigh after a long-held silence, the sound of a name being remembered. The walls of the chamber breathed in. The echoes stirred, and for a moment the traveler was not alone. All around them the whispers began, not as voices but as presence, not haunting, holding. They did not ask for anything. They did not demand to be known. They simply were, a chorus of memory, of being, of having once mattered. The traveler sat back, letting the sounds wash over them. The pool calmed again. The chamber settled. The voices faded not into silence, but into stillness. And something in the traveler's chest, that quiet ache that never had a name, let go. A little, just a little, enough. Chapter 3. Beneath the moss-covered veil. The chamber behind the pool did not lead outward, but downward. A narrow passage opened quietly at the edge of the moss, hidden in plain sight, as if it had been waiting for someone to notice without trying. The traveler stepped lightly, the soles of their feet brushing soft green threads that seemed to pulse gently with their movement. The light dimmed, not in warning, but in welcome. It became something softer, more interior, as if the light here did not come from the world, but from within the tree itself, steady, warm, and old. The path sloped gradually beneath the deepest roots, and as the traveler descended, the air changed. It grew denser, cooler, touched with the scent of damp stone and ancient soil. The silence here was not empty. It was complete. The kind of silence that forms when nothing is missing, when all things have already been said and only the breath of being remains. Walls of woven root and soft earth rose on either side, interlaced with fine moss and pale threads of mycelium that shimmered faintly like starlight caught in cobwebs. The space opened into a vast chamber, not carved or built, but grown, a living hollow shaped by the long patience of the hollow tree and the things it remembered. The floor was smooth stone, veined with silver. Pools of shallow water stretched between low ridges, reflecting not the chamber above them, but shifting images that came and went without rhythm. A forest in springtime, a child asleep beneath a pale blanket, a fox stepping across frost-dusted grass. Each image lingered for a moment, then faded, leaving only the mirrored surface behind. The traveler paused at the edge of one such pool and knelt again, not to drink or reach, but simply to witness. Their reflection did not appear. Instead, something older looked back, eyes formed of cloud and fern, a face shaped not from features, but from feeling, familiar and unnameable. The image flickered and was gone, as if it had never truly been there. The pool shimmered once, then stilled. Farther in, the chamber narrowed again, leading into a corridor lined with clusters of pale mushrooms that pulsed gently with a quiet, green-gold glow. Their light was soothing, the way a lullaby hums in the space between dreams. The traveler walked slowly, listening to the gentle rhythm of their own breath, the way it echoed off the root-wrapped walls like wind moving through an old house. There were markings here, symbols traced faintly into the moss, spiraling patterns not etched with intention, but grown into being. The shapes seemed to respond as the traveler passed, shifting slightly beneath the eye, as if revealing themselves only to those moving slowly enough to see them. And then ahead, the corridor opened into a smaller chamber, round and low, with a ceiling that curved inward like the underside of a great bowl. In the center stood a stone pedestal, no higher than a knee, holding a small, smooth object wrapped in folds of ancient cloth. The traveler approached, drawn not by urgency, but by invitation. They knelt and unwrapped the cloth gently. Inside, resting on a bed of moss as soft as breath, was a key, not made of metal, not cold or hard. It was carved from wood, darker than shadow, etched with faint whorls like the rings of an old tree. Though simple in form, it radiated warmth, as if it had been waiting not just to be found, but to remember who it was for. The traveler lifted it carefully. It was light, but not weightless, familiar, but not known. As their hand closed around it, the walls of the chamber seemed to shift, not physically, but with meaning. A passage opened to the left, behind a curtain of trailing moss that parted silently as they moved toward it. The air here was warmer again, thick with scent, crushed herbs, cedar wood, and something like candle smoke, long faded. They stepped through the veil. On the other side, the space opened once more. Not a chamber now, but a long gallery filled with doors. Each was unique, some round, others tall and thin, some formed of bark and others of bone-white driftwood. A few bore symbols that moved slightly when watched from the corner of the eye. Others had no markings at all. The traveler walked among them, the key still warm in their hand. Not looking for a match, there was no need. The door would find them, and it did. A low oaken door at the far end of the gallery, its surface soft with moss and lined with a spiral of tiny glass beads. No handle, no lock, just a keyhole shaped precisely for what they held. The traveler paused. Behind the door, nothing stirred, nothing waited, only welcome. They pressed the key into the lock. The moss rustled faintly. The door opened, and from the darkness beyond, a slow exhale, not sound, not air, but time itself, uncoiling. The traveler stepped through, and the veil closed behind them, soft as dusk. Chapter 4. The Library of sleeping names. The threshold the traveler crossed did not lead into darkness, though it might have seemed so at first. The space beyond the oaken door was hushed and vast, a cavern not made of stone or soil, but of woven silence. The air was thicker here, but not heavy, more like velvet draped over the senses, warm, still, and untouched by time. Before them, the chamber unfolded, wide, round, and softly lit by countless strands of faint golden thread that hung like spider silk from above. They did not glow exactly. They shimmered gently, pulsing in and out of sight, like candlelight seen through half-closed eyes. They were not threads of light. They were names, not names spoken aloud or written in ink. These were the names kept quietly in the folds of memory, nestled deep where language thins and all that remains is knowing. They hung suspended in the hush, each one trailing down into a tiny bundle of moss and root, cradled with care. The traveler stepped lightly across the chamber, their feet brushing over a floor made of pressed leaves and old parchment, the surface soft and barely rustling beneath them. The scent of old ink and hollow bark lingered in the air, mingled with something less familiar, like the echo of singing heard once and long ago. There were no shelves in this library, no walls lined with books or scrolls. Instead, the space breathed and moved with organic rhythm. Between the strands of name thread and the drifts of soft lichen lining the curved walls, there were alcoves, small hollows that opened as the traveler neared, revealing fragments of stories resting within. One alcove held a smooth river stone with a single indentation at its center. When the traveler looked closer, they felt the weight of a hand once gripping it tightly, a child's hand, standing at the edge of a deep river. The fear was gone now. Only the memory of bravery remained. Another alcove held a dried sprig of lavender bound with a strand of hair. The scent was muted but persistent, and the traveler could almost hear a voice humming quietly in a room lit by firelight. The song was not for them, and yet they remembered the feeling of being near it, of sitting safely just outside its reach. They walked onward, not hurried, not searching. The names hanging from the ceiling pulsed slowly as they passed, and the air shifted around them like water parting for a gentle swimmer. At the center of the library stood a great tree stump, its surface polished, smooth as glass. It was low to the ground, wide enough to sit upon, and etched with the spiral pattern that had followed the traveler since their descent. Around it, the name threads hung denser, a canopy of memory woven so tightly that the chamber felt like a mind turned inward. The traveler approached and sat, laying their hands flat against the stump's warm surface. A low vibration hummed beneath their palms, subtle, steady, like a heart remembering its rhythm. No vision came, no sound, just stillness, and then the presence. It wasn't a figure, it wasn't a voice, it was a sense of something vast and benevolent, not separate from the traveler, but entangled with them, like roots sharing water beneath the surface of the world. The Library of Sleeping Names did not keep records as the waking world does. It kept essence, moments, feelings. the truth behind the shape of a name, not the sound, but the soul of it. The traveler closed their eyes, and in the quiet a story unfolded, not in words, but in warmth. They saw a pair of hands placing stones in a circle, building a quiet place in the woods. They felt the deep silence of someone listening to the wind for answers it never spoke aloud. They remembered a night spent awake beside a window, waiting for no one, but hoping for someone. All of these memories, none of them belonging to the traveler, and yet all of them known, flowed into their heart like a slow tide, not to be held, just to be honored. A single thread lowered from above, drifting toward them with unhurried grace. It hung before them, shimmering faintly with the echo of a name that had once been whispered only in dreams. The traveler reached up and touched it. Their breath slowed, the world too. Not gone, just quiet. The thread faded back into the air. The stump beneath them pulsed once more, softer now. An unseen door opened at the far end of the chamber, its threshold framed with arching roots carved by time into the shape of an eye. The traveler rose, not because they were finished, but because the story was ready. They stepped forward through the archway, leaving behind the strands of names, the lavender and stone, the hum and hush of the place that remembered. Beyond the door, the path curved upward once more, faint light ahead, like early dawn just beginning to gather. The hollow tree was almost finished with its telling. One last place remained, one last breath of the forest's ancient memory, and the traveler followed. Chapter 5. The Dream Root Chamber. The path that opened before the traveler was narrow but certain, a ribbon of soft earth bordered by low-growing ferns that shimmered with a breathless calm. The silence deepened as they stepped forward, not heavy or solemn, but soft, as if the world itself were exhaling in long, slow surrender. Here, the roots arched overhead in quiet reverence, guiding the way forward not as walls, but as gentle arms. The soil beneath their feet was warm with memory, each step sinking slightly into the patient years that had passed through this place. There was no rush now, no destination to seek, only the motion itself, the way it curved inward like thought returning home. The light that had accompanied the traveler since the upper branches of the hollow tree was different here, not brighter, not dimmer, just nearer, closer to the skin. It no longer flickered from without, but glowed from within the walls, from the fibers of the roots themselves. Soft, honey-colored light that pulsed like the heartbeat of a world that had never known haste. Eventually, the path widened, and the traveler emerged into a chamber unlike any they had yet seen. It was round, modest, and quiet, but not empty. This place was full. Full in the way a song can fill a space long after it stopped playing. full in the way a loved one's absence still wraps around the furniture, the air, the heartbeat. This was the heart of the hollow tree, the dream root chamber, and everything in it waited in stillness, not for purpose, not for discovery, but for return. At its center, a low resting place made from the living roots of the tree curved gently upward, forming a cradle more than a bed. It was lined with velvet moss, pale green and cool to the touch. Small feather-like leaves had fallen in places and remained undisturbed, as if even the air here knew not to trouble them. The traveler approached with the reverence one gives to an old truth. Their breath moved quietly through them, deeper now, slower, as if their body were remembering how to rest, how to release. Beside the cradle lay a shallow bowl carved from bone-smooth stone, filled with clear water. A single sprig of lavender floated in its center, gently spinning in place. Around the bowl, a ring of small hollow stones had been arranged in a perfect spiral, some natural, some carved, each bearing a small mark, each one different, each one faint. They knelt beside the bowl, not to drink, just to be near it. A soft hum moved through the chamber, not a sound, but a vibration, low and even, the kind that slips beneath words and lingers in the ribcage. It was not the tree, it was not the air, it was the presence of rest, made tangible, the hush that holds all things. High above, where the rounded walls curved inward to form a dome, there were small circular openings in the ceiling, like the mouths of sleeping seeds. Through them, a gentle illumination drifted down, not sunlight, not moonlight, but something softer, deeper, the color of a closed eye. The traveler breathed, and breathed again, then lay down. The moss accepted them without resistance, shaping itself to the lines of their form like memory. The cradle did not confine, it simply held, gently, as though it had always known the traveler's shape, and had simply been waiting to welcome them back. The wooden key, still warm from their hand, was placed quietly at their side. Its work was finished. No more locks, no more doors, only stillness now. Above them, something began to fall. Or perhaps descend is the better word. Fine threads of silver light, thinner than hair, began to drift downward from the openings above, not hurried, not seeking. Each one swayed as if moved by breath too old to name. They touched the traveler one by one, lightly across the forehead, the fingertips, the chest, and each touch brought warmth, not the warmth of heat, but of recognition, the gentle pulse of being seen without needing to speak, the hush of belonging. One thread brushed their lips, and in that instant, every word they had never said, the ones lost to silence, the ones held too tightly, were gathered, not for telling, but for keeping. Not a burden, a blessing. A soft knowing folded into the folds of the hollow tree. The bowl of water shimmered once, the lavender shifting in a lazy turn, and the chamber grew still, utterly still, not empty, never empty, but full, full of what remains when everything else has been set down. No memory, no thought, no need, Just rest, complete, deep, unending. Outside, the hollow tree stood beneath the slow-turning sky, its branches rising like questions that never needed answers. Moss grew quietly over its roots. The air in the forest was calm, thick with the scent of pine and earth. Wind did not pass here without purpose. The world beyond forgot the path. As it should. Not all doors are meant to remain open, but some are meant to be found again, only in dreams. And within the tree, the traveler slept. And within their sleep, the tree remembered. And so it would remain. A cradle hidden beneath the turning of years. A hush beneath the rustle of leaves. A whisper beneath the hollow tree. Always just so. Chapter 1. Whispers beneath the reeds. In the hush of a late autumn dusk, as the last swirls of sunlight slipped beneath the edge of the mountains, Brother Ansel sat on the cloister wall and watched the mist rise from the river. The abbey bell had tolled vespers, a soft and familiar chime that rolled down the hillside and settled into the mossy stones below. Yet Ansel's thoughts wandered beyond the abbey's walls, into the veil of forest that darkened as the sky deepened to indigo. For many nights now, a different bell had sounded, not in waking hours but in dreams. It came just before dawn, distant and hollow, like something submerged. Its tone was strange, neither mournful nor jubilant, but full of age and patience, as though it had been ringing for centuries beneath the forgotten sky. He heard it from far away, its sound threading through the weft of his slumber like silver through fog. The tone was not alarming, but neither could he ignore it. It called not to his ears, but to something older inside him, something wordless and still. Brother Ansel was not a curious man by nature. He lived simply, tending the herb garden and the bees, copying worn scriptures, and caring for the birds who made their nests in the alcoves of the old stone abbey. Yet the dream bell stirred something deeper than curiosity. It stirred longing, not for answers, but for a presence, a place, a knowing without form. It was Father Cedric, the abbot, who first mentioned Veltrath Hollow. A swamp, or so it's called, the old man murmured over tea one rainy evening. East of here, beyond the Rowan Hills. I passed it once, long ago. A forgotten place, all reeds and still water. It had a silence to it, thick and slow, like breathing peat. Some say it's cursed. Others say it dreams. That night, the bell came again in Ansel's sleep. Louder now, clearer. It echoed between twilight trees and across dark pools, beckoning. He awoke just before dawn, the bell fading into the hush of pre-dawn wind. He sat up slowly, breathing in the cool, lavender-scented air of his cell. The stones beneath his feet were chilled, and the small candle on his desk had burned down to a crooked stump. Outside, the garden was pale with dew. Moths clung to the shutters like faded parchment. The world felt poised, listening. He did not announce his departure, for he had no name to give the journey, no vow to guide it, only the bell. He packed lightly, a small satchel of bread, dried apples, and lavender honeycomb. a leather-bound psalter, a woolen wrap, and in his palm a smooth river stone engraved with the abbey's crest, a quiet benediction from the river he had lived beside since boyhood. The journey eastward was slow and contemplative, as if the land itself had softened to receive him. The hills were steep, but the grasses bent gently, and the birds called low in the evening. He slept beneath trees with bark like wrinkled hands, listening for the bell. Each night it came. Its tone was growing more distinct, less echo, more voice. Sometimes it came with the scent of wet earth. Other times with the rustle of cattails or the heavy silence of water thick with roots. Yet always it faded before the waking hour, leaving him with the hush of wind through lichen and the faint taste of copper on his tongue. On the fifth night, as he lay beneath a willow curled beside a shallow stream, Ansel dreamed not of the bell alone, but of a lantern. It floated above the swamp waters, bobbing gently, casting rings of amber light through the fog. And in its glow stood a figure, not threatening, not familiar, but still, waiting. He woke with a strange calm in his chest, like the slow settling of leaves upon water. The monk rose before dawn, wrapped himself in his cloak, and continued walking eastward toward the edge of memory and the heart of something lost. Veltrath Hollow lay somewhere ahead, still veiled in mist, still dreaming. And the bell, always the bell, rang softly, gently, ever inward. Chapter 2. The Road of Sleeping Ferns. The path into the eastern woods was not marked on any map Ansel carried, nor did it appear to be made by human feet. It wound like a forgotten melody, faint but deliberate, through meadows of dusk-colored clover, and beneath ancient birches with bark like peeling vellum. The land here held a hush deeper than silence, as though even the stones were listening. As Brother Ansel walked, the light softened into a gentle grayness. The trees thickened, their branches arching overhead like cathedral vaults, and the earth grew spongy underfoot. Ferns brushed his ankles, their fronds curled in sleep, folding gently as if dreaming in green. He moved with care, not out of fear, but reverence. Every root and leaf seemed to remember something he did not, and to disturb them without grace felt akin to interrupting a prayer. The air grew cooler, tinged with the scent of moss and faint decay, the clean kind, like rain-soaked bark and mushrooms after a storm. On the second night of his journey through the woods, he found shelter in a hollow of rock near a fallen cedar. The forest sounds were subtle, a distant nightjar, the soft plop of a frog in a hidden pool, and the occasional rustle of leaves stirred by things that passed unseen. There was no fear, only a sense of being watched, not by eyes, but by the place itself. That night's dream came not in pictures, but in sensation. He felt the bell before he heard it, a gentle tremor like fingertips brushing the rim of a glass. It hummed through his bones and stirred a memory that had no shape, only longing. Then the tone came, smooth and resonant, like moonlight echoing off deep stone. This time there were words, not spoken aloud, but pressed into the space behind thought, not forgotten, only waiting. He awoke with wet leaves in his hair and dew on his skin, as though the forest had been watching over him while he slept. A small moth rested on the fold of his sleeve, pale as parchment. He did not brush it away. By midday, the terrain had changed again. The trees thinned, revealing wide clearings of wild grasses, tall and gold, swaying in silent rhythm. Beyond them, low hills rolled like the backs of sleeping animals, and in the valleys between them, pools of dark water glinted faintly. It was here that Ansel first heard it while awake. Not the bell itself, but the impression of it. It came on the wind, almost imperceptible, a kind of absence in the air, like the space where sound had just been. His breath caught, not in fear, but in stillness. He closed his eyes, and the sensation deepened. A vibration behind the sternum, gentle as a lullaby. He knelt then, letting the grasses part around him. A dragonfly hovered nearby, its wings catching glints of coppery light. Somewhere a heron called long and low, like a memory unfurling. The bell was near, not close, but nearer than before, as if it had noticed him. That evening, the landscape shifted again. The grasses gave way to sedge and rushes. The air grew heavier with moisture, and his boots made soft sucking sounds as he walked. A thin mist clung to the ground even as stars appeared overhead, faint and flickering like candlelight seen through water. He camped on a low rise ringed by cattails. Fireflies danced in slow, spiraling arcs, blinking in rhythms that seemed almost meaningful. Ansel lit no fire. The night was warm, and the stillness was complete. In his dreams, the lantern returned. It hovered just above the waterline, its glow steady but muted. The figure beneath it remained unmoving, but Ansel saw now that its robe was sewn with patterns that shimmered faintly. Reeds, herons, water lilies, like things remembered by the swamp itself. As the bell rang out, closer than ever, the figure turned, slowly, gracefully, and reached a hand toward him. He did not wake with a start. Instead, he opened his eyes as if surfacing from a deep lake, the sound of the bell still echoing in the curve of his ribs. There was no longer any doubt. Veltrath Hollow was real, and it was not merely a place, but a presence, a stillness with memory, a bell with no name, calling gently, calling home. Chapter 3. The Mirror Pools. The first light of dawn seeped softly through the canopy, casting dappled patterns upon the moss and leaf litter. Brother Ansel rose with the slow, deliberate grace of the forest itself, each breath tasting faintly of damp earth and quiet beginnings. Around him, Veltrath Hollow breathed in muted rhythms, the gentle sway of reeds, the faint plash of water shifting beneath lily pads, and the whisper of wind threading through the silver-green leaves. The path had all but vanished here, swallowed by the swamp's patient grasp. But Ansel moved steadily, guided by something older than sight or sound. His boots pressed gently into the soft mud, leaving footprints that the water would soon claim. The air was thick with the scent of peat and wildflowers, mingled with the cool sharpness of morning mist. He paused beside a pool, still as glass, a perfect mirror to the sky above. Clouds drifted slowly across its surface, darkened by the shade of towering cypress trees. Dragonflies skimmed the edges, their iridescent wings catching the fragile light. It was a place of quiet reflection, both in form and spirit. The bell had not sounded in his waking ears for some time. Instead, its presence seemed woven into the silence around him, an undercurrent beneath the gentle lapping of water and the rustle of leaves. He knelt at the edge of the pool, dipping his fingers into the cool, dark water. The surface shimmered with subtle ripples, as if the pool itself were breathing in time with his heartbeat. In the stillness, his gaze caught something strange, a faint glow beneath the water's surface, faint as a dream half remembered. He blinked, and it was gone, leaving only the deep, endless reflection of sky and tree. He closed his eyes, allowing the quiet to seep into his bones, and in that moment he felt the bell's presence wrap around him like a gentle cloak, steady, patient, and endlessly kind. It was not a sound, but a feeling, a vibration of time itself folding inward like the closing of a flower at dusk. Here, in Veltrath Hollow, the boundary between waking and dreaming thinned like gossamer threads stretched across the twilight. Ansel felt as if he were standing at the edge of two worlds, each reflecting the other like the mirrored pools. In his mind's eye, the lantern appeared once more, its amber glow diffused by mist, floating softly just beyond the trees. The figure beneath it seemed closer now, not a shadow, but a presence, still silent, still waiting, like the hollow itself. He rose slowly, brushing the damp moss from his sleeves. The day was gentle and warm, and the swamp seemed to sigh beneath the slow swirl of drifting clouds. Walking further, Ansel came upon a narrow channel of water, its banks draped with hanging vines and delicate flowers that glowed faintly in the shifting light. The air hummed softly here, as if the very plants were breathing in rhythm with the bell's invisible song. He paused again to listen, to the wet rustle of reeds, the distant cry of a heron, the soft splash of a fish breaking the water's surface. The swamp was alive with quiet symphony, a music not of notes, but of presence. At the water's edge, a small frog called, a clear, crystalline sound that echoed like a bell itself. Ansel smiled faintly, feeling the deep peace settle over him. That night, as he lay beneath a canopy of stars so thick they seemed woven from velvet and silver thread, the bell finally came. Not loud or sudden, but as a steady, welcoming rhythm, slow and measured, like the beating of a great heart beneath the earth. And in the dream, the lantern's glow grew warmer, casting soft pools of light across the reeds. The figure reached out once more, and this time Ansel stepped forward, his hand trembling with a gentle reverence. No words were spoken. None were needed. The bell rang softly, endlessly, a voice of time itself, folding inward. Chapter 4. The Veil of Still Water. The swamp deepened as Brother Ansel ventured farther into Veltrath Hollow, where shadows lengthened without haste, and the world seemed to breathe in slow, timeless waves. The trees here were ancient, gnarled and heavy with moss, their roots weaving into the dark water like the fingers of forgotten spirits. The air was thick with the scent of damp wood and wild jasmine, mingling with a faint tang of something metallic, distant yet present, like a secret whispered between the reeds. Ansel moved quietly, his boots sinking softly into the spongy earth, muffled beneath layers of fallen leaves and thick moss. The sunlight that managed to thread through the dense canopy filtered down in muted shafts, casting delicate shards of gold that shimmered on the water's glassy surface like scattered fragments of a forgotten sun. It was a place suspended between moments, where time folded gently in on itself, and the waking world softened into dream, both fragile and infinite. Around him, the chorus of the swamp was alive yet hushed, a slow symphony of frogs crooning a low, vibrating hum, the occasional soft splash of fish beneath lily pads, the distant call of a lone heron echoing like a melancholy song across the stillness. But beneath these gentle sounds, Ansel felt the presence of something quieter, older. The bell, not heard, but sensed, an undercurrent of sound folded into the fabric of the air itself. Near a cluster of water lilies, their round leaves resting like emerald plates upon the dark water, the surface of the swamp was so still it held the sky perfectly, a flawless mirror, reflecting clouds and ancient branches. Ansel knelt beside it, the cold creeping slowly up his legs, and peered into the depths where shadows moved with the slow grace of dancers beneath the water's surface. The bell was here, in this silence, in this waiting. His fingers brushed the cool water lightly, and a ripple spread wide, distorting the perfect reflection. The gentle motion stirred something unseen beneath, a flicker of amber light pulsing softly, like the heartbeat of the swamp itself. In that moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. The sounds of frogs and herons quieted, and the rustle of leaves stilled, as though the swamp awaited a secret revelation. From the fogged edges of the hollow, a figure emerged. Cloaked in robes woven from mist and shadows, it stood quietly on the shore, neither beckoning nor retreating. The lantern it held cast an amber glow that shimmered gently on the water's surface, dancing with the faint breeze. Ansel's heart slowed, and in the stillness he felt the weight of centuries folding softly into that quiet presence. The figure was neither young nor old, but seemed both, an echo of time itself, steady and patient. It was as if the hollow had taken form and come to meet him, carrying the memory of all things folded into the silence. He sat down slowly on a moss-covered root, the chill evening mist settling around him like a gentle shawl. The bell's tone pulsed through the stillness now, no longer distant, but a warm companion, woven into the night's fabric like an ancient lullaby. The figure lifted a hand, palm open, and in that gesture, Ansel's mind filled with a quiet understanding. This bell was not a summons or a lament. It was a song of waiting, a song of remembrance. It was the voice of Veltrath Hollow itself, the guardian of stillness and patience, marking time not with urgency, but with kindness. Here, in this quiet place, the world was not forgotten. The swamp was holding space for dreams, for memory, for moments folded gently into the quiet heart of the world. Each ripple, each breath of wind, each slow passing shadow was a note in an endless song of peace. As the sky deepened into a canvas of stars pricking the night with silver light, Ansel leaned back against the sturdy root, his gaze drifting upward through the skeletal branches. The bell's steady rhythm pulsed within him, a slow unfolding of peace that unspooled through his veins like warm honey. Around him, the swamp breathed in unison, the gentle sway of cattails, the flicker of fireflies dancing in the dark like tiny lanterns themselves. The lantern's amber glow softened and mingled with the pale light of dawn yet to come. In that stillness, Ansel felt a slow unfurling within his soul, a quiet coming home to something he hadn't known was missing. Not a place on any map, nor a destination to be reached, but a presence, a patience, an endless becoming. The bell sang softly, endlessly, a voice of time folding gently inward. The hollow was alive, with waiting, with quiet, with understanding. And in that waiting, Ansel rested. Chapter 5. The Whispering Bell. The days in Veltrath Hollow passed quietly, each one folding into the next like soft petals of dusk. Brother Ansel moved through the swamp with growing ease, his senses tuned to its subtle rhythms, the delicate murmur of water weaving through reeds, the faint shimmer of dragonflies in flight, the slow sigh of wind threading through ancient branches. The bell's presence was no longer a distant echo, but a whisper carried on every breath of air. It was a delicate vibration felt beneath the skin, like a secret pulse at the edge of awareness. Each evening, as twilight draped the hollow in pale blues and silvers, the bell's tone would rise gently, never loud, always patient, an invitation rather than a call. Ansel found himself drawn to a narrow channel where the water moved slow and dark beneath arching willows. There, the surface was so still it seemed to hold the weight of the world. He would sit for hours, watching the reflections shift and blur, feeling the bell's quiet song ripple through the air. One night, beneath a sky dusted with stars, the lantern appeared again, floating like a soft ember among the shadows. The figure within remained silent, but this time its presence felt less distant, more like a companion walking beside him through the hollow's deep stillness. In dreams, the bell's tone grew clearer, rich and warm, folding around him like a familiar embrace. The voice behind it was still nameless, but no longer unknown. Ansel sensed that the hollow was more than a place. It was a living memory, a space where waiting was not emptiness, but a gentle holding. The bell was its heart, keeping time with the slow unfolding of all things. He rested often by the pools and listened not with his ears, but with the quiet center of himself. The journey was far from over. The bell still called, still whispered of places unseen, of truths yet to be touched. But the fear that once shadowed Ansel's heart had softened into a calm expectancy, like the pause before a breath, the moment before dawn. And so he waited, wrapped in the hollow's patient song, the nameless bell singing softly in the distance, ever near, ever kind. Chapter 6. The Silence Within the Sound. Morning broke gently across Veltrath Hollow. Mist clung low to the roots of the cypress trees, and the sky, veiled in soft lilac and pearl, seemed to hover just above the water's skin. Brother Ansel walked slowly, as if the hush of the world asked him not to hurry. Each step forward felt like a breath released after lifetimes of stillness. He followed no path now. The hollow guided him. The bell had grown quieter in recent days, not absent, but subtler. Its song now lived within him, less a sound than a knowing. The lantern no longer flickered at the edge of dreams. It now floated beside him in waking moments, casting amber light on moss and stone. And the silent figure, who had once been a distant presence, now moved with him, just behind his shoulder, like a shadow that meant no harm. That morning, Ansel arrived at a grove where the water gathered in a great, motionless basin, surrounded by leaning trees heavy with memory. The grove felt older than anything he had known. It was not marked by age, but by stillness. The kind of stillness that comes only after long listening. In the center of the water stood the bell. Suspended from a simple wooden frame draped in moss, it was larger than it had appeared in dreams. It rose like a dark moon from the mirrored surface, not gleaming, not grand, just quietly there, as if it had always been waiting. Ansel approached the edge and knelt in the damp moss. The water was too deep to wade, too dark to see the bottom, but he did not need to reach the bell, not with hands, not any more. He closed his eyes, and in that stillness the bell rang, not aloud, but within. It was a resonance that filled his chest, spread through his ribs like warm water, moved up his spine and down into the soil beneath his knees. It vibrated through every part of him, and with it came memory, not his own, but the hollow's. He saw the long slumber of the swamp, felt the slow erosion of time folding upon itself, the silence of things not forgotten, but gently set aside. The bell was never meant to wake anything. It was not a call to action or warning of danger. It was a keeper of stillness, a song of preservation, a lullaby to the land. The figure beside him stepped forward then, finally clear, no longer veiled by mist. They wore robes simple and loose, their face neither old nor young, but shaped by serenity. In their eyes, Ansel saw no secrets, only welcome. And for the first time, the figure spoke. "Now you've heard it," they said. Their voice was like wind through reeds. "And so you may rest." Ansel did not answer. He simply bowed his head, tears gathering quietly at the corners of his eyes, not of sadness, but relief. He had not come for answers, only for the question to be allowed to live inside him. The bell rang again, within, around, beyond. And then it was still. The figure faded gently back into the mist, as though they had never been separate from it. Ansel remained at the edge of the water long after the sun had climbed into the trees. He did not feel the need to move. For the first time, he was not searching. The bell had no name, because it needed none. And Veltrath Hollow kept on breathing, slow and quiet, waiting not for anything, but simply because it knew how. Welcome, traveler. It's time now to let go. The world of the waking is dimming, the day's weight has softened it to dusk, and all the sharp edges of your thoughts are beginning to dissolve. You are safe now, here in this quiet space where nothing must be done, and nowhere calls your name. Let your body become still. Feel the hush wrap around you like ancient velvet, like moss on stone. There is no rush here, no burden of time, just the long breath of a story, drifting, like fog, over forgotten hills. Chapter 1. Beneath the whispering canopy. The forest was already half asleep when the traveler arrived, its canopy dimmed in shades of pewter and ink, each leaf a fading sigh of light. The path behind them had vanished. Perhaps it had never truly existed. But ahead, the trees opened in a hush of breathless invitation. There was no map, only the faint shimmer of embers beneath the underbrush, a flickering line of soft gold that curled like a cat through the woods. The traveler did not speak. They rarely did. Words felt too heavy for this place, too sharp. Instead, they moved slowly, as one might through a dream they are not sure they wish to wake from. Each step sank gently into moss and loam, the earth cool and forgiving. The air was rich with the scent of cedar, leaf mold, and something older, something like memory or forgotten song. Here, light did not shine so much as float. Fireflies drifted like sleepy stars caught in slow tides, and high above, thin strands of mist curled through the boughs like the remnants of old stories not yet spoken aloud. The ember path glowed faintly at their feet. Not fire exactly, there was no heat, no flame, but a kind of warmth nonetheless, as though the forest itself remembered long-lost hearths and traced their echoes into the soil. The light pulsed slowly, in rhythm with the traveler's steps, guiding but never rushing. It seemed to hum in a language too gentle to hear, but not too quiet to feel. They paused near an ancient tree, gnarled and hollowed at the heart. Its bark creased like the skin of a sleeping giant. Something lived inside, a slow, curling presence, like a breath held too long, but it did not stir. The traveler placed a hand on the trunk, and the wood felt cool, but awake, as if the tree had been waiting patiently for someone who would not ask questions. Above them, the sky deepened into velvet hues, indigo, silver, and the faintest trace of violet. The last bird call had faded, and in its place, the forest sang a softer lullaby. The creak of limbs swaying, the hush of leaves turning over in their sleep, the quiet exhale of wind through nettled undergrowth. A small stream wound through the roots like a silken ribbon, its surface glassy with reflected starlight. The traveler knelt to sip from it, and the water tasted of stone and memory, of snowmelt and lullabies once whispered by unseen mouths. It left a cool trail down their throat, and in its wake a strange comfort bloomed, as though something within them was being gently unfolded. Farther along the path, shapes began to emerge in the haze. Not creatures exactly, though some had the suggestion of limbs or wings, but more like reminders, shadows cast by emotions not yet named. One drifted past, a thin silver filament like the wisp of a dream forgotten upon waking. Another lingered just beyond sight, tall and thin and pulsing softly, like a heartbeat made visible. None of them made sound. None of them watched. They simply were. The traveler felt no fear, only the kind of awe that wraps itself around silence, as if every step forward unspooled a thread of something sacred, something beneath thought, beneath language. They reached a low clearing where the embers gathered in a spiral, curling inward like a sleeping nautilus. The traveler stood at its edge, listening. A breeze passed through, cool and careful, and with it came the scent of smoke, though no fire burned. It smelled of candle wax and hearthstone, of pages turned slowly and libraries no longer marked on any map. And in that spiral of emberlight, something stirred, not a creature, but a feeling, a memory not their own, a glimpse of marble towers wrapped in ivy, of bridges spun from silver thread, of bells that rang once and have not rung since. The traveler closed their eyes, felt the echo, let it pass through them like dusk passes through the trees. When they opened their eyes again, the spiral had straightened into a path once more, leading deeper, always deeper. The forest was darker now, but the embers shone brighter, cradling their steps in gentle light. And above all, the hush remained like a promise kept. The traveler moved on, slowly, softly, dreaming with their eyes open, and somewhere far ahead, the first glimmer of Hollowvale, lost city of twilight and ruin, began to stir from its slumber. Chapter 2. The Grove of Listening Stones. There was no telling how long the traveler had walked. Time had softened here, blurred at the edges like ink soaked into velvet parchment. The ember-lit path unfurled beneath their feet in its quiet golden hush, as steady and patient as breath. The deeper they went, the more the forest changed, not with suddenness, but with the slow grace of evening becoming night. The trees grew taller here, but thinner, like pillars holding up a cathedral of stars. Their bark had turned pale, nearly white, etched with fine silver threads that glimmered when the wind stirred the leaves. The foliage no longer rustled in green murmurs, but in soft whispers, barely heard, yet deeply felt, like voices speaking behind a dream. The traveler paused, and the hush welcomed them like an old friend. Each breath they took seemed to draw the forest closer, as though the trees leaned in to listen. And then the grove revealed itself. It was a wide clearing, perfectly round, cupped gently in the arms of the woods. At its center, a ring of tall stones stood upright in the moss, each one worn smooth by ages untold. They rose at uneven heights, yet their presence was steady, almost regal, guardians of stillness, sentinels of silence. The stones glowed faintly in the emberlight, not reflecting it, but seeming to recall their own memory of flame. The traveler stepped between them, and the air changed, becoming denser, yet softer, like the hush of snowfall. There was no sound from the forest now, only the breath of stillness, the kind of stillness that carried meaning, though no words were spoken. They sat upon the moss, cross-legged and unhurried, in the center of the circle. The ground was cool, but not cold, the kind of coolness that soothed rather than chilled. Around them, the stones hummed, not with music, but with memory, old, old memory, layers of it, curling like fog. Then came the voices. They did not speak aloud, nor rise like sound. Rather, they emerged in the mind, gentle as a drifting thought, clear as a bell in water. The traveler did not flinch. They had heard such voices before, though never quite like this. Each stone spoke in turn, not in language, but in impression, in feeling. The first shared the taste of rain on ancient marble and the echo of footsteps in a hall whose roof had long since fallen. The second gave the scent of lavender grown wild through broken streets and the warmth of a hand once held, now gone. The third offered the vision of children chasing fireflies through empty archways, laughter like wind chimes, long vanished. Each stone told its own quiet truth, fragments of a world that had drifted into sleep. Hollowvale. The name curled through the traveler's mind like a thread of smoke. A city that had once stood tall with grace and beauty, now folded into twilight, not destroyed, not forgotten, but remembered differently by the trees, by the wind, by the stones, by the hush. The traveler closed their eyes and let the memories pass through them. There was no sorrow here, only stillness, no mourning, only reverence. These were not ruins, they were remnants, not broken, but waiting. As the traveler breathed, a soft wind passed through the grove. The moss rippled. The embers flared brighter for a moment, then softened again, as if sighing. One by one, the stones faded back into stillness, their stories shared for now. The traveler rose slowly, respectfully, bowed their head, and stepped out of the circle. The path was still there, waiting, curling onward like the tail of a gentle flame. The trees leaned close, their branches swaying just enough to guide without pushing. Ahead, the forest shifted again. The white trees grew sparser, giving way to darker, denser growth. Vines heavy with night blossoms unfurled along the ground, their petals glowing faintly with a soft, silvery blush. The scent of them, cool, sweet, and strangely familiar, wrapped around the traveler like a half-remembered lullaby. And still the embers glowed beneath their feet, faithful, unfading, leading deeper into dream. Above, the sky had turned a deep blue-gray, dusted with stars that blinked slowly as if watching with old, drowsy eyes. The traveler walked on, each step lighter than the last, as if the forest were quietly lifting the weight of the world from their shoulders. A sound, soft, rhythmic, low, began to pulse through the earth, not loud enough to disturb, only enough to guide, a heartbeat, slow and ancient, thudding deep beneath stone and root. The path curved gently toward it, and somewhere just ahead, beyond the reach of starlight and branch, something old and beautiful awaited, something not seen in waking eyes for many lifetimes. The traveler did not quicken their pace. There was no need. Nothing here would be lost to haste. Every step was part of the remembering, and the ember path led on. Chapter 3. The Lantern Pool. The air grew softer as the path turned. It was not that the forest became warmer. No, The breeze still carried the cool hush of deep-rooted places, but something in the texture of the world grew gentler, as if the leaves themselves had turned to velvet, and the sky was now woven from fine dusk. The traveler followed the ember path as it curved through a grove of hanging vines and shadowed branches. Above, the canopy had opened just enough to reveal a wide spill of stars, gleaming like softened pearls in a bowl of ink. There was no moon, only the faint silver sheen of starlight and the pulsing golden hush of the embers below. They came upon the pool without realizing they had arrived. One moment the path curled through undergrowth. The next, it opened into a glade so still it felt untouched by even breath. The water stretched before them like black glass, wide and utterly smooth, as if not even time